You may know of or maybe even seen some incredible buildings such as the Empire State Building or the Seattle Space Needle. These buildings can most certainly be called extraordinary and marvels of the world today. But now what I would like to talk to you about are some buildings that were built thousands of years ago, or some of them thousands of years ago, without the use of cranes or welders. I'm talking about the 7 wonders of the world. I'll start with the Colossus of Rhodes. There we go. Alright, oh yeah, the island of Rhodes is off the coast of what is now modern-day Turkey. The statue at the time was 110 feet tall, and it was a statue of the Greek titan of the sun, Helios. The statue was constructed because the people of Rhodes had a victory over Demetrius, and they wanted to honor the god for their victory. They were attacked by Demetrius because they supported Ptolemy. The Tsars of Lindos started building the statue, but he never actually saw the finish of it because he died before the completion. The statue took 12 years to build and cost 300 talents, or what is now $5 million in today's currency. The statue consisted of bronze plates on the outside, with stone columns coming up through the middle, and an iron framework on the inside that connected the stone columns to the bronze plates. Next, I'll talk about a more familiar structure, the Great Pyramid of Giza. This pyramid is located 10 miles south of Cairo, Egypt, on the west bank of the Nile River. It is actually the largest pyramid that was ever built and remained the tallest structure in the world until the 19th century. It is the only one of the 7 wonders of the world that is still standing today. The pyramid was made as a burial site for Pharaoh Khufu in the 26th century BC. Some of the more impressive statistics of this pyramid is that it takes up 13 acres of land. Each side is roughly around 756 feet long. And impressively, each corner measures almost exactly at 90-degree angles. The pyramid itself is made out of 2.3 million cut stone blocks, each of them weighing an average of about 2.5 tons, which the heaviest block weighing 15 tons. The sides of the pyramid at one point had limestone capping the sides, which probably made it shine in the daylight, and the very tip of it was made out of electrum, which is a mixture of gold and silver. The pyramid contains 3 chambers, one that is beneath the surface, one that is just above the surface, and then one in the heart of the pyramid, which is actually the burial chamber for the pharaoh. There are some speculations as to how this was made because obviously the blocks are very heavy and its enormous size would have made it very difficult to be built. But unlike previously thought, it was not made by slave labor. In fact, it was actually made by Egyptian peasants. And according to History.com, a new theory has popped up that maybe they built an earthen ramp beside the pyramid that, as it was built, the ramp went up with it, and then once they completed it, they took down the ramp. Now I'm going to move on to a more mysterious structure, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. This building was built in the 6th century by King Nebuchadnezzar II for his wife Amytis, because she missed the mountains and vegetation of Persia. Now, little is known about the Hanging Gardens because there's actually no solid proof that these even existed, and there are no modern Babylonian writings of this building. We only know about them from Greek writers that wrote about them after Babylon fell. We can only guess what they looked like from the description of these Greek writers. Ancient History Encyclopedia.com described it as a tier building that may have resembled a mountain. On top of these terraces and hanging over the sides were the various plants, which is why they were given the name the Hanging Gardens. Since all this vegetation obviously took a lot of water, there may have been some kind of water pump pumping water from the Euphrates River. Dr. Stephanie Dalley from Oxford University thinks that there was actually a mistake, and these gardens never actually existed in Babylon, but in the northern Syrian city of Nineveh, and they were made by King Sennacherib. This mistake could have been made because Nineveh at one point was known as New Babylon. Next on the list is the Lighthouse of Alexandria. This lighthouse was built in 250 BC in Alexandria, Egypt, and it took 40 years to build. The lighthouse was 400 feet tall, and it stood for 1,500 years before it was toppled by an earthquake around 1375 BC. It was constructed because Alexandria at the time was a huge port city, But the only problem was in the harbor there were a lot of rocks and shoals that made it hard for ships to navigate, so the obvious solution was to build a lighthouse to guide the ships. On top of being a lighthouse, this building was also held government offices, stables, and a balcony to enjoy the view of the harbor. To top it all off, at the very tip of the lighthouse was a statue of the Greek god Poseidon. Juan Yves, emperor, a French archaeologist, went to the harbor in 1994 and found some of the blocks from the lighthouse still in the water. I'll now move on to one of the more intricately built buildings of the Seven Wonders, the Mausoleum at Halicarnassus. This building was built in 353 BC, or it was built from 353 BC to 350 BC in what is now modern Turkey. At the orders of his wife Artemisia, the building was constructed to hold the remains of Mausolus of Cara. Artemisia was later buried here too. This building stood for 1,800 years before part of it was destroyed in the 15th century by earthquakes. And now, this building actually isn't famous for the size of it, even though it was 140 feet tall. But what made it famous was how intricately it was made, with decorative carvings all around it, as you can see, and larger-than-life statues. And on top of this building was a 25-foot tall statue of the couple riding a chariot together. And a little fun fact, we actually get the word mausoleum from the building this was made for, Mausolus. Next is a major symbol of the Greek culture, the statue of Zeus at Olympia. This statue was located at Olympia on the Greek Peloponnese Peninsula, or what is now modern-day Western Turkey. The statue was designed by the famous sculptor Phidias around 435 BC. Part of the statue was destroyed and set on fire by the orders of Emperor Theodosius II after the rise of Christianity, and an earthquake came and destroyed the rest of it after it stood for 800 years. We know what it looks like from the descriptions of the 2nd century geographer Pausanias. He described it as a 40-foot tall statue of Zeus sitting on a throne with the Greek goddess of victory, or Nike, in his left hand, and in the right hand he held a scepter with an eagle on top of it. The entire statue was set on a 3-foot high pedestal. And again, just like the mausoleum, this statue wasn't famous for its size, but its beauty. The statue was made entirely out of raw materials. It had ivory skin, plated gold robe, with complex animals and flowers all around it. And the throne itself was also made of ivory, precious stones, and ebony. And last on the list is the Temple of Artemis at Ephesus. This building, sometimes called the Artemisium, was built in 550 BC in Ephesus, also modern-day Western Turkey. It was burned down 200 years later by the arsonist Herostratus on July 21st, 356 BC. And his reasoning was to be remembered in history, and that obviously worked, and we're still talking about him. The structure was rebuilt for a second time, and it was made more intricate the second time, and this second building is actually the one that made it to the Seven Wonders list. The second building was 450 feet long, 225 feet wide, 60 feet high, with 127 columns that were covered with gold and silver. Inside the temple was an altar for Artemis, and there were paintings around the altar with religious works scattered around the building. The second building was finally destroyed by the Goths in 262 CE and was not rebuilt. The city of Ephesus and the area around it eventually turned into a swamp as the years passed. In 1864, the British Museum funded John Turtlewood to go and dig around the area in order to find some remains of the buildings. And after 5 years of hard work, Wood finally found the remains of this building buried beneath 25 feet of mud. Even though most of these buildings may not be around today, their influence and culture is still prevalent to our world. The fact that those buildings could be built without modern technology shows the innovation and determination of people at that time. I hope that you remember the skill of those people and the symbols that they represented. Their hard work and architectural skills could be considered another wonder of the world.